Greeting viewers, thank you for joining us. Columbia Global Centers Nairobi warmly welcomes both our local and global audience to the continuation of the African Book Talk series. Columbia Global Centers Nairobi is part of 9 regional hubs positioned around the world by Columbia University. The centers serve as platforms for dialogue and the exchange of knowledge in research, education, as well as public programming. We are delighted that you have chosen to be part of this broad network because we would not be able to achieve our mission without your participation. Today, we are privileged to have our sister from South Africa, Lerato Mogoatlhe. She will share about her adventures and lessons through her journeys in Africa. Lerato is a traveler, a speaker, editor, and author of Vagabond, Wandering Through Africa on Faith. This is a story on how a 4-day trip to Accra inspires her to quit her life and fabulous job as an entertainment and lifestyle journalist to backpack across West Africa. She had no job or savings except travel experience of 4 work trips. 3 months in West Africa turned into 5 years of living and traveling around Africa. She doesn't live on the road anymore. However, she still travels Africa extensively because this continent is her home and she wants to know it more intimately. We definitely look forward to hearing more. Our moderator is Wendy Njoroge. Wendy is a bookish curator, entrepreneur, community builder, podcaster, and a reading advocate. Her work is invested in making African literature discoverable to a wider audience. We will post extended bios on the chat section for your review. Before we get started, kindly note that this program is being recorded and will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. As we proceed, please post your questions under the Q&A section. Remember to follow us on our social media pages so that you can stay updated on our upcoming programs. Our handles are at CGC Nairobi for Facebook and Twitter, cgc.nairobi for Instagram, and Columbia Global Centers Nairobi on YouTube. I would now like to welcome Wendy to take the program from here. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you very much, Pauline, for that beautiful introduction, and most welcome, Lerato, to this conversation, this part of the Africa Book Talk series, which Columbia organizes. And we take this opportunity to highlight authors, their work, and bring together some readers for them to interact. And so for today, I'm very, very honored and pleased to be discussing this book, Vagabond, Wandering Through Africa on Faith. So from the minute I read the back of the book, I was just blown away because I've always wanted to travel. I have been around the continent, not as much as I'd like to. I mean, because of work and family and, you know, the usual. But when I read this, I just thought, oh my gosh, it's possible to do this. It's possible to prioritize seeing the world and seeing our continent. And so thank you so much for writing the book, Lerato, and for even more, thank you for making the time and joining us today.
Thank you so much, Wendy.
Yeah. So I just wanted us to start. I know you're going to in-depth in the book about what sparked your love for travel, for seeing Africa, and for, you know, just leaving home without even having somebody you just show up in a city or in a country, not knowing a single soul, but being confident that somehow you're gonna make your way. Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you know what I love about showing up and not knowing what will happen and how it will happen is that there was from the moment I started my travels, it was the first of many affirmations of why it is so important for me as a storyteller, as a traveling storyteller, to document and tell our story beyond stereotypes, right? Because everyone thinks our continent is this big, bad, conflict-ridden place. You know, it is horrible in Africa. You can't go anywhere without fearing for your life, whether it is violence, whether it is crime, whether it is petty, it is robberies, but the picture you are generally painted is of a very unsafe continent. So from the very, very onset, my experience was a counter narrative. It was an alternative story. I arrived, didn't have a plan. People in Senegal took me under their wing. They took me over. I remember when I arrived, Jean left work, and instead of going home after working a day and night shift, came to a hotel he found for me to then go help me look for a place that was comfortable. And you know, I can be very finicky about choices, right? It was day one. I was still very into myself about choices, and I kept on saying, no, this is not good enough. No, this is not gonna work. No, we need to find the perfect place. I will know it. I will feel it when we walk in, right? So here's this strange man hosting this strange girl who just showed up at his workplace, and on top of that, she keeps on saying, I will know it when I feel it. But it really was just so telling of what would encompass my travels around the continent, even now when I'm no longer broke, even now when I live in South Africa half the time, even now when I am better planner. The truth still remains. I can arrive anywhere on this continent, and I do, without any grander plan, and someone will always inevitably take me under their wing.
Wow, isn't that lovely? You know, that affirmation and that knowing that you're really just home, and that hospitality is extended to you without you asking for it or even being expected to pay for it. Because I read, there's so many instances in the book where people invite you to live with them, to stay over, to have a meal, you know, and it's just, oh, here is our sister from South Africa.
100%. I think that blows me away. You know, it blew me away in real time, but I still even reflect on it because it's such an enduring lesson in Ubuntu. And it's such an enduring lesson in love and how it's not end. When you really, really just think about it, I can just show up and you can choose to love me or not. But obviously, if you love me, much more better, right? The world becomes a kinder place, gentler landings and softer landings for others. So what that really did was also allow me to travel emotionally. So it was an external journey, but this external journey created an internal journey of deep reflection on love, deep reflection on individual freedom, deep reflection on how I experience the world, but also particularly experience Africa and move around the world as an African.
Great. I'm curious to know at what point the idea of the book came about. Because when you set off, did you think, okay, I'm just gonna go on this journey? And it's so vivid when I'm reading this. Either you have a very sharp memory, or you already knew you wanted to write a book from the start, or you're a diligent note taker. Just tell us when the book became alive for you.
It's a combination of everything. Because I'm a writer, I think it's inevitable that it was always going to end up as a book, right? But the challenge was always going to be, what kind of book is it going to be? And out of this entire experience, what would the story be? And initially I thought I'd do a series of travelogues without connecting the book, without connecting the places. So you just read about the places and remove myself. But then I worked with a publisher, and then we eventually were able to say, you know what, actually make the narrative just about you going and arriving, and try to, you know, and not try to involve yourself in it. Because at first, I wanted to write a book that I'm not a part of. I was just going to tell you about Kenya, but I was not going to be involved in that. I didn't want to center myself. But I'm very glad that it ended up being a story that first flows from me. And I remember in particular when I knew that I found my intro. I had my intro in January 2009.
Okay.
That's when I wrote the opening paragraph of Vagabond, and I hadn't even traveled, right? I had just been to like 3 countries, but that's when I wrote the opening paragraph. And I knew when I was writing that new story, I knew it. I was like, yes, I now have the introduction to my book. Wow, however long it takes to write, whatever else happens between now and that moment.
Yeah. Oh, great. And that's beautiful that you are able to also work somewhat while still being able to pursue your dream of, seeing as many places as possible. And
absolutely.
And it wasn't always luxury. Actually, it was hardly luxury.
Hardly at all. So I look back, right? And I'm like, would I do that again? Yes, of course, for adventure, for experience, right? But also I hope that I never get to do that again when I go on another big traveling break, just to also be much more comfortable physically. But what I did love, and I think I appreciated this so much, is that Vagabond was the first time I was traveling, period. I had never traveled, only been on work trips. It was the first time I was freelancing. It was the first time I was living away from home for a very long period of time. It was a book of firsts in so many ways, including my first book. And I think I'm glad that it ended up becoming what it decided to be.
Yeah.
Because I think that allowed me as well, through part of writing the book, to also re-experience the journey and recreate and reimagine what it means to continuously live in a perpetual loop of traveling and travel storytelling. I mean, at any given moment, I could just pack up quite literally, be like, that's it, I'm moving to a different part of the continent for a few weeks,
Great. And I would like to read a section of one small paragraph from the book. But before I do that, I'd like to invite our audience to take advantage of asking questions using the Q&A, and we'll be able to see that as we go along. So audience members, so this is my discussion as well as yours. Please let's engage Lerato. And so I'm reading from page 280 of Vagabond, and it's actually the last paragraph. I'm starting at the end. I have been traveling Africa since 2008. While I know only too well that there are ways of arriving in a new country, like knowing where I'm going and where I will be staying, I will never be this person, and it's okay because I'm home in Africa. And this has stayed with me much longer after I've closed the book, and it made me think of some of the things that prevent the average person from, leaving their routine, leaving their comfort zone, and to, just leave and go and follow this dream. Because I think everybody wishes to travel, but then there's always like, oh, I haven't made enough money. I don't know the language. I don't know the place. I don't know anybody. But this is such an affirmation that, you just need to do it, because in any case, you're home, right?
100%.
Yeah. And just to underscore like what you had said earlier, that you show up with little expectation, with little planning, just so that you're surprised. Everything is a surprise. And on the same note, like I mentioned, that there are always these perceptions or things that we hold in our minds, beliefs that prevent us sometimes from, from exploring and going out there. But also those things, those beliefs tend to be stereotypes or beliefs of how the world is, or how anywhere away from home is, maybe because of the kind of news that we get served and all that. And I'm curious to know that were there places that surprised you, that you had read about and you had been warned about or heard about, and but you went there and you were like, okay,
Yes.
Yeah, please tell us.
So I think what I need to mention is that I've always been very woke around identity, engaged with identity, engaged with stereotyping. It's part of the reason I wanted to become a writer, was to write our story. So that would be Black, that would be African, that would be woman, from an authentic space, right? So I didn't expect, and also I treat every place that I go to, I just imagine that it's my grandmother's house. So no frills, no airs and graces. I show up to that environment. I don't show up with my lifestyle, my perceptions, my influences. They don't take center stage. So even within that, I was like, no, I'm not a stereotypical person. You know, I thought, I definitely knew, I was like, I'm not stereotypical in any way. But then I went to Kakuma refugee camp in northern Kenya when Southern Sudan was voting to be separated from North Sudan, from Khartoum. And I arrived at the refugee camp, and everything, and I dislike this so much about the mind of a journalist, everything I saw, I was making a mental note. I was memorizing it so that I could write it out as soon as possible. I was noting the lack of material things. I was observing. I remember seeing a mom building her house and it had no door. And I remember just being overcome with pity. And I remember walking past the school and thinking, my God, it's so horrible. You know, look at what this amounts for a school. And then it was the last day of voting. There was a big party. People were celebrating because they knew that they had voted for a new African country to exist. And then there was day one, the first few hours of arrival. Then I didn't have a place to stay. I was broke. I didn't have any money. I only had money to buy a bus ticket from Nairobi to Kakuma. So I asked one of the ladies who was there, it was evening time, and someone said, should we walk you to the hotel? And I said, no, I don't have a place to stay. She invited me over to her house, right at a refugee camp. It was so beautiful. It was a hut, yes, but she had taken kitenge. Yes, is it kitenge? It's just taken kitenge and then put it on the roof. It was bright and orange with squiggles. And then she had put very beautiful homely touches to this hut, right? And dinner was just a flat bread and corn. It was corn, some corn stew. But it was so amazing just because it was shared with people. And as we were sharing it, we were laughing, we were joking. They were teaching me their favorite songs. We were dancing. It was a brilliant night out. And the next day, I met a guy, and I remember going to myself, Lerato, never again will you walk into any space in the world, but particularly Africa, and dehumanize people by pitying them. How dare you? You know, how dare you look at the school and not see that it contains dreams and that those dreams are valid, that someone who studies here can dream of being a doctor. Because if I'm pitying that school, what I'm saying is that it doesn't matter what you dream of. It's highly unlikely to exist here. But that's not true, right? Everyone's dreams are legitimate. Everyone's home is a home, full stop, irrespective of whether my home is different from theirs or not. And that was such a big moment for me. It changed how I tell stories. I started becoming very deliberate about measuring every word that I use. There's no word that I use carelessly in my storytelling of Africa. I also started realizing that a story is in fact first human beings and lived experiences. And what is so important for me about telling that story is that I must not narrate circumstances. I must introduce you to a person, right? So then when I introduce you to a person, you're not a refugee, you're not displaced, you know, you're not boxes that I tick and labels. You are a business owner. You are an amazing host. You're vivacious. You are a teenager in love. You are a wannabe rapper. You are someone dreaming about the world as much as I do. And also going out there to experience it, because what I loved about Kakuma was I also met someone who came to vote, and he said he had a scholarship and he was studying engineering in Australia or New Zealand, and he came home to vote, and he said, because I wanted to vote at home with my people. And I thought, this is so beautiful. This is home. It's nothing more, nothing less. So now when I write, I do not use refugee camp.
Wow. Thank you so much for that beautiful articulation of that. And you get that spirit that even as you travel, it's not about, yes, you will go to the tourist places. Yes, you will go see monuments and animals and all of that. But mostly you travel to connect with people, you know? And I think that's a real paradigm shift of how even we sell. I know this is a conversation that I see online, and I'm happy that it happens. Even how we package Africa to the world, even as much as we want to attract tourists, you know, we're not saying, yes, the Mara is there. Yes, there are dolphins swimming in the ocean, but this is a land of people, you know?
And the people make the plays, right?
Exactly.
Because an animal is not going to come and show you generosity. An animal is not going to come and even bug you. It's not going to annoy you. It's just not going to give you the fullness of the human experience. But above and beyond the fullness of the human experience, and this is so important about Africa. As far as destinations go, the unparalleled natural beauty, the epic natural beauty, the incredible things that are only found in Africa, all those things, that richness, the diversity of the land itself, the diversity of the cultures and how it's instant. And as a traveler, it's always instant, it's always intense. You know you are traveling, you know you are here. Despite all of that, despite the history that spans centuries, despite these monuments that remind us of Africa, pre-colonialism, for instance, pre-enslavement, despite all of that, throughout all these times, it is we, the people, who make this continent, because to travel, to be a stranger, and to not miss the love in your own life back home, that is a miracle. To be in Mozambique, for instance, and be eating a plate of food that I cooked with someone who only speaks Portuguese and I only speak English, and we have nothing in common, and we've never met before, but we can sit and cook, and the meal tastes exactly like love, when it was in fact cooked by a weary traveler and a lady who had knocked off work, but this girl showed up with a note in Portuguese written by someone saying, apparently you must help me cook, right? And I think that's like such a miracle, because, you know, for me, there's a difference in how I want to experience places. I travel because at first you see monuments, at first you see the pictures of paradise, you see things that pull you there, and usually that tends to be the touristic things. So that's why I love going to them as well, to tick them off. You go there for those things, right? But if that's all you experience, when you come back, you've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Whereas if you make it a people-centered experience, then it's an encounter of a lifetime. Then it's a moment in time you never forget. You absolutely never forget the moment when you encountered someone, particularly when they were receiving you from a space of love, of patience, of it's actually just love, nothing more. What makes a group of policemen in northern Kenya, in Kakuma, start a collection plate so that, again, this stranger who just showed up one day can get a ticket back to go to Nairobi? You know, what makes a total stranger move out of their own home and comfortable bedroom to go sleep on the ground at a beach just because I showed up one day when they were having a beer? You are out with your friends just having a beer. Next thing you know, Jesus, there's this girl, now you must sort her out because hakuna accommodation. Like, if you think about it, it does not add up, right? But you have lived it and experienced it, you know that it adds up. And it's the truth of this continent, bar none, any place that I have been. I'm assured of the fact that I will be home, and not just superficially, being home, and you as my host, you as the family in that instance of home, you embracing me and taking me in and letting me experience it through you as well. For me, that will always be the highlight of my travels. I have traveled a little bit outside of the continent, and I have never experienced it anyway, to a point where I always say, when I'm outside of Africa, my soul feels cold.
when I was reading those bits of the book, and I was like, wow, this is just a miracle. Like how much consistently people are opening their hearts, their homes, their pockets, inconveniencing themselves, living their life so that they make sure that, oh my gosh, we must make sure that Lerato is safe. She needs to go where she needs to go. She doesn't speak the language. So here is somebody who will walk with you the whole day to translate, to make sure you go to the market. Oh, that was beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much that the music had already connected you to so many places. I know you talk extensively, like at the beginning of the book, about listening to West African music and West African musicians, and going to music festivals, and already that made me so happy. I started as I was reading the book, and then I started saying, I think I'm gonna make a Spotify playlist inspired by Vagabond, because the music comes up so many times. And also there's the literature. You had already encountered these places long before you showed up. And of course there's the food. So I just want to ask you to speak a little bit more on, how music and dance and is a part of how you experience a place, either before or when you're there, or you've never been there, but that's just eternal connection.
Absolutely. Vagabond was my travels. I experienced my travels and therefore wrote Vagabond with different sub-personalities coming to the fore, right? But with the music in particular, it was the inner child. It was the happy inner child, the playful, happy inner child, because before I tasted any food cuisine that was not South African, before anything else, the first thing that connected me to the continent was music. And it was an interesting encounter with me, because firstly, South Africa doesn't consume a lot of African content across board. It really doesn't consume that content. It's changing now, but it's still very, very little. So but when I was growing up on SABC TV, they used to play African music a lot. It was always just more or less the same people, the icons. It was Salif Keita, Kajanin, Papa Wemba, but I would watch, I'd be so transfixed. You could not get me away from the TV. This would be the screen and this would be me like this. Oh my God, oh my God, I cannot believe this. I cannot believe it, and I loved it. I just always think, oh, what's that language? I wonder what it's called. Ooh, am I pronouncing it properly? Ooh, I wonder what it feels like when someone who's a native pronounces it, right? Because probably my tongue is just remixing it. And because of that, I wanted music to be part of the experience, because that is how I first traveled. When I had just started working, I used to have an evening ritual where I just go to my house in the evening and I just take a shower and I make a drink, whether it's coffee or tea or champagne, and I sit. We had a cute little patio, and I would sit and I love stargazing, and I would stargaze listening to Yusundo, and I'd be like, one day I will be in Dakar, one day I will be in Senegal, one day I will discover this and that, and I will no longer read about it. I will know it through all of my senses. And so it was important, because what happens with travel stories is that I didn't want it to be my story only. Yes, these are my journeys, right? But it needed to be a very vivid and descriptive book, so that you have been there without having to first get money, first balance your priorities, and then maybe get around to going, right? Yeah, that's my goal. I hope you go now. But while you wait to go now, here are other ways of experiencing it. Experience it through music, because you can just get on Spotify and play, right? Yeah. So now you have experienced that, experienced it through food, because you can now just walk out of your home and your comfort in your city and just go find where there are other people from different parts of the continent and taste their food. So already you have been there through your taste buds, right? You have connected to it through your taste buds. And then when you finally get there and arrive, you will create your own narrative. It will be your own story. But the feeling of knowing a place that intimately without having to do the groundwork for yourself is comforting, because it makes travel feel easier. It makes travel feel safer. It makes it seem that much more closer.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And I think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that Spotify playlist, because as you were going through different countries and discovering different music acts, I was also checking my Spotify and thinking, oh, I don't think I've heard about Habib Koite. So let me see what the sounds like. And I'm very pleasantly surprised.
And isn't he just the best? Oh, isn't his music just mind-blowing?
Oh, yes. There's there's one that's playing in my mind right now about LA tequila, and it's just
yes.
Yeah.
And he's a fun party animal too. I think one of my favorite encounters and memories, my favorite experiences in life is Habib is my favorite musician. Meeting him in the middle of the desert, in the Sahara Desert, befriending him, doing tequilas with him, partying with him. He can't dance, right? And I'm like, no, sit down. Let me show you how he does to your music. That was phenomenal.
I must say, I'm very envious of your experiences. Like, you met the icons and, and had a really great time. But throughout the book, there is one African, an African from the diaspora who keeps showing up. And that one is Bob Marley.
Yes.
So do you have any thoughts on, I think his music, of course, then there is the whole encounter with Jamaicans who have been repatriated to Ethiopia in the Ethiopian section. But I found it very interesting, because I always thought it was a Kenyan phenomenon, this fascination and this reverence for Bob Marley and what it stood for.
It turns out that, that song, everybody loves Bob Marley, everywhere I go, it's the same old story. It turns out that it is true, it's not just the lyric. And what I loved was that, again, how music is such a universal language, because I love Bob Marley. I listen to Bob Marley every day. There's an album that I must just listen to. There's a song, Bob Marley song, for different seasons of my life and so on. So, but then above and beyond that, I think for a lot of people who are Pan-Africanist and leaning towards Pan-Africanism, particularly when there was very little literature, very little access and connections that have been facilitated by living in the information age, in the digital age, we got our political education from different sources. It could be inspired by music. It could be, some of my feminism was, I got to understand more and position myself more as a Black woman from reading The Cry of Winnie Mandela and just seeing that analysis of patriarchy that could connect with intimately, right? So I think for a lot of people, music has been our conscientization. And with Bob Marley, I think the role that reggae plays, reggae is always pro-Black, pro-Africa, always motherland, right? So just, it's very Kwanzaa, no Christmas, very Kwanzaa. And it's amazing. So it's a part of political education. And so when you start experiencing, when I was traveling around the continent, and it became another instant connection. I love reggae, and everywhere I go, I will find a reggae club or some place where reggae is pulsating, and I know there'll be a connection. One of my favorite experiences of reggae, in fact, is when I miss Kenya. When I say I miss Nairobi, what I mean is that I miss getting into a matatu in Nairobi and have that reggae blasting the entire time I'm stuck in traffic, right? So Bob Marley became, again, another point of connection. When you do not have a language in common with people, you have interest in common with people. When you share ideologies, in fact, you're just discovering each other, right? And what makes a person tick, and you can't articulate it fully in language with words because you lack the language. We can articulate it by understanding and sharing what it means for us to love, let's say, Redemption Song or War or Pimpa's Paradise.
Yeah, I love that. That's precisely the point. And I like how there was also a lot of resonance with Lucky Dube, again, speaking on reggae. And you had to answer a lot of questions of what happened. That and Bafana's performance, you know.
So I killed the Bafana story. One day in Cairo, when I was inside the Grand Pyramid, someone asked me, and I said, you know what, you don't know this, but you're the last person to ask me this. I'm telling you, and then after I tell you, I will not engage further. I'm just going to walk away. I know it's rude, but I'm sorry. I'm just letting you know now. I'm just going to answer you, then I'm turning my back. And now when everyone speaks about Baparafan, I'm like, no need to trigger, no need to take it all that far back. Let's move on. It never existed. With Lucky Dube, it was so, you know how I keep telling you that this book feels a lot like my inner child, right? There was, on a Sunday when I was growing up, there was a stadium not far from our place. And when there was a big concert, you could hear the music spilling over. And then if you sat on a wall or just like some high thing, you could see all the way to the stadium. And then that one Sunday, there was a Lucky Dube concert, and it just went on and on and on and on. So there was that. So it kept replaying itself. When I was traveling, because I'm listening to Lucky Dube, but I'm experiencing him through his legacy, through what he means to people, through how other people perceived him. I just loved his music, right? I just loved his music. I wasn't like engaging with it beyond just like vibes. But then it started being such a deeper thing because I met someone who had polio. And he said that when he listens to Lucky Dube, he feels free. He only feels freedom when he's listening to Lucky Dube and Salif Keita, and he feels that their music is so filled with love and affirmation. It just does something for him. And everyone had that Lucky Dube story. Everyone is just playing Lucky Dube. Everyone loves Lucky Dube. And when West Africans tell you I mourned for a month, they're not joking. Hey, I love them because they're so dramatic. So people were mourning him, people were sad, people were confused. How do you kill an icon? You know, if we understand that there's crime in South Africa, but even if you told yourself that you're going to rob someone and you see that it's Lucky Dube, surely you turn around. You don't go ahead. You just don't. And then they started wanting to make meaning for themselves. Then they said, surely it can be crime because you can't shoot Lucky Dube. You cannot, even if you're a criminal. It must have been propaganda because his music is freedom. His music is challenging the status quo in Africa. So he must have been offed by one of the governments, right? I have a good conspiracy theory, but this is not one of them.
You know, I find it so interesting how you become an ambassador for your country. And you must have an answer. You must have an answer for these people.
I know. I'd really rather not be an ambassador for South Africa. I love South Africa, but I also think that I do not particularly appreciate how South Africa relates with the rest of the continent. And it really bugs me. When I go to Kenya, I just arrive at the airport and I'm let in. But when friends have come to Kenya, to South Africa from Kenya, they must prove that they have income, that I'm hosting them. And it's...
I know.
South Africa is taking down the group average here.
Let's talk a little bit more on that. And I know you... as a South African, the passport is much stronger than a lot more of the other African passports, and probably you but you still have to encounter some uniforms, as you call them. So this is border personnel, and it's almost always an unpleasant experience, you know, because as a traveler, the default is that, what are you coming here to do? There's hostility. It's never, oh, look, we have a visitor, we have a friend coming to visit us. It's always, you know, you're met with hostility and suspicion, and you're already guilty now. Prove to us that you're a worthy visitor, right?
Yeah.
And even further into, our ancestors didn't have to, you know, to show any kind of documentation when they needed to move from one place to another. And this whole borders and nationalities, these are very recent things. And do you have any thoughts on whether would see maybe during our lifetime a point where we have frictionless intra-Africa travel, and Africans having a much better experience traveling within the continent?
I think it is possible to find that as African we have a much better time of traveling the continent, but I believe that that experience is going to happen if we detach ourselves from governance and our governments and the dynamics of intra-African traveling that are currently making it so hard for us to travel the continent, whether it's how exorbitant it is to fly to some places, whether it is the lack of information that should be supplied by tourism boards, but especially when it comes to visas. Ideal case, visas fall, right? Because they are very prohibitive, they're preventative, but at the same time, visas are money.
Yeah.
And the realist in me says, what are the chances that government would let go of millions and billions of revenue just for some feel good woo-hoo-ha Pan-African thing? It's not woo-woo-woo, right? It's true and it must happen. But leadership, AU and so on, pay lip service to it instead of turning that into a reality. So for me, that tells me that it's not a priority. It's not something that is going to happen. They're not going to fall because there's a financial gain and benefit for visas, from visa fees. But what can happen is that the experience can be painless. It can be visa on arrival. I don't have to run around doing visa administration before I travel. I wanted to go to Sierra Leone last year, and the nearest, I needed to first apply for a visa. The nearest embassy from Johannesburg is in Nairobi. And they said, oh, you must DHL your passport. I mean, what do you mean DHL my passport? Are you kidding me? Who DHLs a passport? Yeah. Right? Like, who just DHLs a passport to a building they've never met, never known, not in their city? And then I was like, well, obviously it means I'm not going to Sierra Leone. So I think there needs to address affordability. Doesn't have to be so exorbitant. And then secondly, it doesn't have to be a chore to accomplish. Show up on arrival with a valid passport, and you can get your visa on arrival. And then another thing as well that is problematic is that in some countries on the continent, I'm not going to name drop them, but Ethiopia and South Africa in particular, there's a very my experience of these countries at an institutionalized level is one of anti-Blackness and an anti-Africanness, because it should be as simple as me arriving with shillings in Johannesburg and changing them at the airport. Doesn't have to be a big deal. That's not the case. I have a substantial collection of currencies that's worth thousands because I can't easily change them here. And then in Ethiopia, you can get a visa on arrival, but you only pay in dollars.
Yeah.
And what do you mean? Because your ATMs do not give out dollars, they give out bills. So if I'm withdrawing bills, that must incur another cost of changing that into dollars. So I think there just needs to be, in the absence of the Pan-African passport we were promised by the African Union, in the absence of that, let's have ease of movement. Let's make it easy for an African to wake up and pick a place on the continent and go experience it.
Yeah. You know what's what is not surprising but is hurtful is that foreigners will have, or rather non-Africans will have an easier time accessing Africa than an African. I mean, and the most affluent countries that have the purchasing power and their citizens have, you know, are doing much better and are able to pay for visas, will not be required to pay any visas. You know, Say for instance, a German passport or Japanese passport will have you accessing virtually probably all of African countries.
Yes.
You know?
And to get there though, you need to jump through hoops.
Exactly. So I don't know, there could be some citizen, you know, power somewhere that we can sign up and just compel the African Union. I mean, in the absence of the African passport, which again, for political reasons might never happen, is just to at least say that for intra-Africa travel, and that's the thing, like, I think Ethiopia is one country that is doing really well in that regard. As it's one of the most friendly to, you know, hosting other Africans.
Yes,
yeah.
I give them that. You just show up with your valid passport, give or take that. I don't remember how much it is now. It used to be $25 back in my day. You go in and that's that, right? And also while we're talking about that, then let's give a shout out to Senegal. You just show up.
Oh, okay.
Senegal has always been, in fact, that's how when I wanted to travel, I wanted to actually start around East Africa and go up to East Africa and then go around. But then the administration put me off. So I started randomly calling the countries. And then when I called Senegal, they said, oh, you can just show up. And then that's how I started in Senegal. And I think, so places like that, Senegal does that. Kenya for me also has been a very pleasant experience. I just show up. Uganda has been amazing. There's a visa fee that I have to pay as a South African, but you can pay whether it's by air or land, and you can pay dollars or local currency. And so there's a sense of, I might not like that I'm paying $50 because it's a lot of money, but it's not an inconvenience. I just show up and I pay. For me to pay, I remember when I was going to Burundi, I needed to go apply for a visa in Pretoria. I live in Johannesburg, so I needed to travel like an hour out. And, you know, that's a lot. You have work, you have to balance things. In the end, it was actually easier for me to just fly to Kigali.
And that's one bit. And then there's the other bit that you will do all of that, show up at the border with the right documents, your visa and all your papers. And sometimes that's still not enough. And you've had some instances where, you know, you have used different tactics, you know, to make sure.
I will weigh you down. If there's one thing that I pride myself on, is that I deal with immigration dynamics and the uniforms. I'm like, depending on if I will get my way or not, the goal is to always get my way. So sometimes getting my way means that slipping in a few notes in my passport, because that's just, it is what it is. Everyone is slipping in some cold drink money, right? So my goal then in this instance becomes, I must determine how much I'm bribing so these people don't steal from me. So managing costs. And then another tactic, and this one I love, is if I have time and I'm in the mood to argue. So if you catch me when I'm PMSing, I will sit. And if it takes 24 hours and this has happened, so be it. It will take 24 hours, but I will have my way.
And especially when you still, on top of that, you have to deal with the language barrier, then, you know.
It's so funny because then I'll be getting annoyed, and then I speak very fast and I'm like, wait, I'm using Google Translate, French. It's funny. I don't want to lie. A lot of, you know, for me, traveling is an all-encompassing adventure. Nothing about it, not the dynamics of the visas, not the uniforms, nothing about it for me. It's not just this big beautiful adventure, right? Because the whole point of memories, the whole point of memories, the whole point of leaving home and spending this money is that you must come back with memories. You must come back with a story to tell, even if you're replaying it to yourself. And, you know, stories are interesting because there are twists and turns and there are multiple experiences, not because you went there and everything was perfect.
Yes. And I'm that's I got that from the book, that, you know, you're not expecting for things to be perfect. You're not expecting that the red carpet will be rolled out for you. You are expecting to encounter life in all its shades and forms, right? And that's really that's a really healthy attitude to adopt, because I think then you don't get frustrated. And then if you do, it doesn't color the whole trip, and you're able to divorce your encounter with the people and with the authorities, and not think that, oh my gosh, I had such a difficult time getting into this country. Now everybody in that country is
Oh, I think it would be such a fatal mistake to do that, right? I think I told you, journeys create journeys, internal and external, and that there's a warmth and a love to being around Africa that I personally feel it when I'm not in Africa and I'm like, oh, my soul feels cold, right? It's because of just that love, that spirit of being held by others in love, and you're protected and you are cherished, and it has nothing to do with anything except that you are human, nothing else. You're just a human being, therefore worthy of my kindness, of my love, and so on. So that's very important, because if you look at certain frustrations, and it's true, there are frustrations and challenges, and you let that determine how you experience the continent when you're traveling, or even let that experience determine if you will travel the continent or not, what you are missing out on the other end of it is that, think about the enduring appeal of Africa as a destination. It has been, unfortunately, colonizers, but it has been philosophers, it has been travelers, it has been merchants, it has been writers, artists, unfortunately missionaries, but, you know, people came. There's an appeal, and it's enduring. And it is unlike anything else. You know, here, perhaps it's the blessing of development that's not on overdrive, where now everything is just a skyscraper and you can't see beyond the glass and the skyscrapers. But the blessing is that there are many places in Africa where you can be, and physically you are in the year you arrive. So physically I could be in 2021, but around me, centuries and histories are colluding and constantly intersecting, and still so there, so tangible there. You know, Cairo still has some of its oldest mosques. So when I'm there, I'm not just in this city, I'm experiencing the city, a part of the city as it was 500, 1,000 years ago. And those collusions in Africa, they often merge a lot, right? And I think it's beautiful to travel, and the experience becomes not just physical and emotional, but it transgresses history and time as well. It transgresses everything you think you know about the continent and the world, or how people connect.
It's great you mentioned that, because when you were at the Voodoo Forest, that whole experience, I felt like this hasn't aged a day. This is probably what it looked like 200 years ago. People are still worshiping the same way, and the shrine and everything. It's beautiful that, you know, you bring that out, that yes, you are experiencing right now, but you're also experiencing a lot of history and a lot of culture. I'd like to just take a question that I see on the Q&A, and somebody is asking, are you ever scared of it, or do you ever feel threatened, especially as a woman? Can you speak about potential risks and safeguards? I know you traveled solo for the entire book, correct? So do you ever feel unsafe? And
I only felt unsafe once. I felt unsafe when I was in Ethiopia, in Hara. It's the highlands, and the roads are narrow and the driver was avoiding previous speeding tickets and fines. And eventually he would just drive past the roadblock, but it's just one way in and out. So the traffic officers called ahead. When we got to the next roadblock, they had closed the entire lane. There was literally this little bit of earth, of flat earth to navigate. And right here on the edge was the highlands. And if anything goes wrong, no miracle will save you. You are dying. You are dying, you're falling down. It's as if you're falling down from the sky. No miracle will save you, right? And I wasn't going to die. And I decided that this guy has clearly decided that if we die, we die, and that's good for him. But it was not my narrative. It was not my story. My mother was not coming to pick me up in Ethiopia, a mangled corpse. I always have this little sharp knife because I can't afford a Swiss knife, but I have this little sharp knife that I use so that I can peel avocados, I can be able to make salads and so on the go. And I always keep it on my hand luggage, right? And I was sitting behind him and I put out that knife and I put it here. Disclaimer, I am from Pretoria and girls from Pretoria are rough and we are proud of it. We are not the ones to be messed with. We will F you up. It is a known fact. So I took that knife and I put it here and I said, stop this car because I want to leave. I wasn't saying he must stop running around. I just said, I'm uncomfortable. Please stop so that I can leave. You don't even have to refund me. I just need to know that I'm safe. So he wouldn't do that. It took that for him to finally actually take me seriously. And everyone then started complaining, stop it, to the driver, stop it. Actually, you're not going to play with our lives. We're going to the police station and then you're going to pay them. So we went to the police station and we went to pay. That was the only time I didn't feel safe. And then another time, also in Hara, in Ethiopia, it was a dramatic 48 hours of my life. I went, as it happens often, I met someone at a restaurant. They were at another table. They said, oh, he's sitting alone, come eat with us. Then I befriended him. And then we spent a good part of the next day after meeting, drinking beer and chewing cud. Like in Hara especially, Mira is the thing. Like the town closes at midday because everyone is on Mira, right? So I'm on Mira with him. And I like Mira. It's a social experience and it's very relaxed. And I think oftentimes a lot of people mistake intimacy with romance. I don't know why people struggle to experience intimacy and love without defining them from romance and lust. So because we're having a beautiful, intense moment, he thinks, oh, it must be sexual sparks. It's not. No. It's just conversation. You know? So he comes into my room and he opens the door, he flings it and he tries to kiss me. This was an annoyance in particular because I don't like Hollywood notions playing themselves out in my life, right? Because you know the Hollywood dream, the Hollywood version that plays itself out in your life, it's never a random stranger who happens to be the person who's going to give you that life-changing opportunity you've been waiting for and praying for. It's the one who's coming to bug you thinking, oh, you fall in love in 30 seconds and they can just come and kiss you and oh God, we in love. So I said to him, I just need to stop. Again, I'm very uncomfortable, but we've been, admittedly, we are vibing. For me, it was a social vibe. So because of that, I'm just going to look at this as I see how you can be confused and think it's sexual intimacy when people are just connecting, or maybe if particularly if they're men or women where there's not that much mixing. So you need to stop it. You wouldn't stop it. And I said to myself, oh gosh, okay, I need to give him his Hollywood then. Girls take notice. I said, well, I need to give him his Hollywood version. Oh, the great Adonis, you are so right. I'm so weak at my knees. And then, I pretended to kiss him. So I put him down on my bed and I was like kissing around everything. And I was like, oh, Adis. I was removing his shirt. And I took my mouth, man, I opened it and I clamped his breast. He like this. He tried pushing, nothing worked. The only thing that made me let go was that my jaw was tired. And he was like, are you trying to kill me? I was like, Adis, that was me giving you a warning shot. And only because I still think you're a cool guy. in reality, what I should be doing in a situation like this is that your dick should be lying there by the side.
I mean, I read that bit and I was just laughing out loud because I think this guy will never ever try it again with anybody else.
Never.
Yeah.
And it was just that. But
Yeah.
above and beyond that, just be safe, right? Be
Yeah.
very, very, be safe. Don't be, by safe, I mean, move the way you would move at home, you know? It's very strange that I'll speak of stranger danger, but like,
Yeah.
for instance, I was somewhere recently when I was in Sao Tome, someone was like, oh, you actually going to, you want to go to DRC? I said, yeah, I want to go to DRC, but I'm broke now, so I'm going back to South Africa. And I had been meeting that group of people almost every day at this restaurant where I liked having my dinner because they made really nice, they had rice. Sao Tomians eat matoke and I don't like matoke. So that restaurant always had rice. So I went there for my dinner and they were like, oh, we're going to Jersey tomorrow. You can just come in my private jet with us. And I'm like, yeah, anyway, I'm gonna pass purely from a stranger danger perspective, right? Because if I'm up in the air, how am I getting out of trouble?
You're very right. And if you've watched the Tinder Swindler by now, you know.
Don't be moved by private jet.
Anybody inviting you to a private jet trip on the first day of meeting them is not
problem. So by and large, very safe. But I think my experience of the safety has been that I just exercise a lot of common sense. My general rule of thumb around my safety, and always use what works for you versus how another person experienced it. Because again, different personalities. My personalities, I'm not easy to scare. And then, like I said, if I feel like I'm in danger and someone is trying to threaten me, I'm likely going to like counter attack and scare them more in return, right? But that's just what works for me. What is a general rule of thumb is, what would you do in this situation at home? Like here at home, I feel uncomfortable getting into an Uber when I'm not 100% in my mental faculties. I won't do it. You know, everywhere I go, I want to have a power bank and be able to connect so that I can just talk, right? If it ever comes to that, it has never happened, but if it ever comes to that, so that's what I do. When I go with strangers, I choose when to go. So if a stranger says to me, we are going, come, let's go on a trip. Yeah, I'm definitely coming. Stranger danger. That's the whole point of traveling. But if they say to me, we are leaving at 12 midnight, I'm asking them that we leave at 10 a.m.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. And I like that use the same principle that you would use at home, because even for me, sitting here in Nairobi, when I'm using public transport, sometimes I'll just do a quick look and see if the matatu only has men. I'll just wait for the next one.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very, it doesn't give me good vibes, because I don't know how many of these pickpockets, you know, I don't know.
You know what? That's true. That is very true. You must do that always. And I think also for me, don't be afraid to speak your mind. Don't be afraid. Like if you're with people and you're becoming uncomfortable, express the discomfort, because you're not fighting. Once in Ghana, I was working with these guys. We met at a chop bar. It was nice. They turned into night. We're jamming to like a dube. And then they were like, oh, let's just come to one of our houses. We're going there. We'll hang out the whole night, because I was waiting for a bus that was leaving at, I think, 4 a.m. Yeah. So I was like, I'm not paying for a hotel, because I won't be there. So they were like, let's go to one of our houses and hang out and vibe. It was nice. I loved it. They were amazing guys. The energy was great. But as we were walking, I started thinking, you know, I've never been to Accra. It's my first day here. It's night, so it's dark. And then also my eyesight is horrible. I can barely see at night. So do you see how I'm no longer
in control?
I'm looking, yes, I'm not standing solidly on 2 feet, essentially. Because yes, I'm on 2 feet, but I can barely see. Yes, I'm on 2 feet, but I don't know where I am. So even if I needed to remove myself from a situation, where would I turn to next? And I just said to them, hey guys, you know what? I actually just realized that I don't know where I'm going. And I'm always uncomfortable at night when I don't know where I'm going because I can't see. So I rely on familiarity.
Yeah.
So we can't hang out together there anymore. Do you mind if we just go back to the chop bar and hang out there? And they were like, oh, that's such a pity, but we get it. Like, you know, coming from South Africa as a woman, probably when you think of strangers and men who are strangers, it's a no-go area. And I was like, yes, that is in fact true. And they said, no, but we're not like that. And I said, yes. And I'm not saying you are, but I'm just saying I'm feeling very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And we all understand the context of that. It has nothing to do with you. It is the context of my experiences as a woman. And then they were like, okay, cool. Let's go back to the chop bar. Then we'll just all hang out at the chop bar with you. And then when we're tired, we'll just go back to our home and you'll be fine. And I've done that in some few other places. I just said, you know, I'm very uncomfortable and I want to go. And no one who doesn't have ill intent for you freaks out.
Yeah. Yeah. Very correct. I would like to let you go, but before you go, I know this book came out before COVID and quarantine and all of that. I'm just curious to know how being in a pandemic has affected what was your nomadic life. How does it feel like not being able to move? And I picked up that you mentioned that you were in Sao Tome. So if you were to add any more chapters, what places would feature in the book? And if there's any other question, please feel free to drop it quickly in the Q&A in the next 2 minutes before we wind up.
Sure. If I were to add a chapter of Vagabond, I would actually rewrite Egypt.
Okay.
Because I keep going back to Cairo and I keep unpeeling its layers in a way that could not have happened without the multiple trips. And then I would also update it with my travels to Sao Tome. And I would force, you know, when you force a connection, I would force a connection with my experiences of Salvador de Bahia in Brazil and Havana, Cuba. In Havana, Cuba, I met this guy. It's voodoo, but it's a different name, Candomblé, whatever, I can't pronounce it, but it's voodoo. And that's how Africa has remained, right? Because they were enslaved, and that's how his ancestors got there. But he has never been to Africa, and he doesn't know it except just consuming African music and whatnot. But this religion that he's grown up in, that's voodoo, when he speaks of the names of the gods, it sounds exactly the way it sounds when someone in Benin says it, or someone in Togo, right? And that was like, oh, wow, imagine exploring ancestral memory through travels, right? So I want to do that. So it would be that. The pandemic didn't affect me at all. As soon as we were allowed to travel, as soon as President Ramaphosa said you can leave the country, I left. And let me tell you, not only did I leave, anytime they said the president is going to speak and I was in the country and the rumor circulating was that he's closing borders, I would buy my ticket, run outside of this country, so that if the borders are closed, please God, can they be closed when I'm out adventuring? I'd rather be in lockdown in a different country, because at least it's still a different country, than in lockdown in my house in Johannesburg. I love it, but hey, those months were tough.
Yeah. You were clever about that. And somebody is saying that, would you consider writing a book or something on assertiveness and how not to people please? Travel can be a teacher on how to install your own guardrails. Yeah.
Oh, wow. This is such an incredible point to mention. I'm noting it. I'm really noting it because I'm looking forward to returning to one country and living there for a year, or maybe two, but just in one place. So I'm just looking forward to more travel writing. So you never know, but I love this suggestion and I love going with it, because again, yes, it's true. The training, the teaching that that traveling does. And I think for women in particular, there's a lot of value. Value. I've got to appreciate that. I don't care for respectability. I've got to appreciate that, you know, if people were like, oh, you're so bitchy, I'd be like, oh, you're mistaken, super bitch. You know, not because I am. I'm actually a very kind and sweet person, but because I was just in my head, it doesn't matter. You know, I've made up my mind, I've decided, and I'm not going to move again. I'm not going to move around the world as an African and as a Black woman in a way that you expect me to, and in a way that your structures and systems like me to.
On the last parting shot is, how can people get the book Vagabond? Again, please get, we are talking about the book, all these experiences and more are in the book Vagabond.
Yes.
Wandering to Africa on Faith. How can people get the book?
In Kenya?
Yeah.
In Kenya, you can buy from Samanami Books. It's now on, and then you can get Kindle.
Okay.
I'm looking for another supplier for Amazon. So unfortunately, at the moment, you can get physical books only in Kenya and South Africa. Otherwise, you can get a Kindle book. But please follow me on my social media and let's just connect, or even if it's connecting on LinkedIn, anyway, we can connect, because I've been working on a travel platform so that I have a website that just connects people closer to travels as well. And then I'm also in the process of finding ways of really just getting Vagabond physically available to as many places as possible. It's a slow process, but do bear with me. In the meantime, let's connect and keep each other in the loop. And as and when things happen, you will know.
Yeah, great. Yes, so Lerato's social media handle is on the chat, so you can take a quick look at that. And before we hand it over back to CGC, thank you so much, CGC, for organizing this. Thank you so much, Lerato, for beguiling us with your travel stories and for really putting this book out there so that we always have a reference point and a mentor to look up to. Thank you, guys. Back to you, Pauline.
Okay, thank you so much, Wendy, and our very special guest, Lerato, for spending time with us, sharing your experiences that have left us reflecting really. One has to be really bold to explore new places. Thus, we salute you, Lerato. She definitely expounded on what home is on such a deeper level. It's a sanctuary that we all treasure. I'm sure our audience has been very inspired. We would like to remind you all to kindly follow us on social media. I'm sure you can appreciate this kind of programming that we are bringing, you know, and a wonderful way to spend your evening. Not only do we have such events, we also share many opportunities that are related to academia from our partners, local partners, and in the region, and from Columbia University. As for now, we wish you a wonderful evening and see you next time, very soon, next week and the following week. We keep going. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.